The hegemony had conquered 47 star systems in the past century. Their crystal-hulled dreadnoughts cut through space like shards of frozen starlight, each one a masterpiece of engineering that took decades to grow in their biomechanical forges. When they detected the radio signals emanating from the third planet of a small yellow star, they expected another simple conquest. Admiral Ra stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, her four arms crossed behind her back as she watched the blue-green world rotate slowly on the main viewer. Her species had evolved from crystalline beings, their bodies naturally forming geometric patterns that reflected light in mesmerizing ways. To most species they encountered, they appeared as living gods, their very presence inspiring worship or immediate surrender. "Initial scans complete, Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Ox. "The planet shows signs of primitive industrial development, nuclear fission technology, basic satellite networks, and crude chemical propulsion systems. Population approximately 8 billion. Ra nodded, her crystalline features catching the light from the bridge displays. "Standard procedure then. Deploy the intimidation array. Once they see our fleet in their skis, they'll surrender within hours. Most primitive species can't comprehend technology so far beyond their understanding." The fleet consisted of 12 massive vessels, each stretching over 3 kilometers in length. Their hulls were grown from living crystal that could self-repair and adapt to different threats. Energy cascaded along their surfaces in patterns that hypnotized most species into submission. They had learned long ago that psychological warfare was far more effective than brute force. As the fleet moved into Earth's outer solar system, something unexpected happened. Instead of panicked broadcasts begging for mercy, the human communications networks exploded with activity. Military channels buzzed with tactical discussions. Scientists demanded telescope time to study the alien vessels. News networks scrambled to cover the story of the century. Admiral Ox reported, his voice uncertain. "They're not responding as expected. The humans appear to be organizing." Ra's 3 eyes focused on the tactical display. "Organizing? What do you mean?" "Their military forces are mobilizing, but not in retreat. They're taking up defensive positions around their planet, and they're broadcasting messages to us." "Put it on the main viewer." The image of a human appeared on the bridge display. The creature was bipedal, with strange, soft skin and eyes that held an intensity Ra had never seen in a primitive species. The human wore some kind of uniform covered in symbols and insignia. "This is Admiral Sarah of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said, her voice steady despite the impossible odds she faced. "We acknowledge your arrival in our system. If you come in peace, you are welcome to establish diplomatic contact through proper channels. If you come with hostile intent, be aware that humanity will defend itself." The bridge fell silent. In 47 conquests, no primitive species had ever responded with such calm defiance. Ox was the first to speak. "Admiral, surely they don't understand what they're facing. Our fleet could glass their planet within hours." Ra studied the human's image. There was something in those eyes, something that made her crystalline skin shimmer with unease. "Send the standard ultimatum. Demand immediate surrender. Perhaps they'll come to their senses when they understand the futility of resistance." The message was transmitted, along with a demonstration of power. One of the frigates fired a particle beam at a small asteroid, completely vaporizing it in a flash of brilliant light. The display was meant to show the humans exactly what would happen to their cities if they refused to submit. The response came back within an hour, and it wasn't what Ra expected. "We have received your ultimatum," Admiral said in her follow-up broadcast. "We have also observed your demonstration of firepower. Impressive. However, humanity does not surrender to threats. If you wish to claim our world, you will have to take it. But know this, we will not go quietly into extinction." More troubling were the reports coming from the fleet's sensor operators. The humans weren't cowering in their cities. Their orbital installations were being rapidly modified. Strange energy signatures appeared around the planet as defensive systems came online. Most unsettling of all, human spacecraft were launching from the planet's surface at an alarming rate. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting massive industrial activity on the planet's surface. They're manufacturing something at an unprecedented rate, and the energy readings from their installations keep increasing." Ra moved to the sensor station, her reflection casting rainbow patterns on the displays. "What kind of energy signatures?" Unknown, Admiral, but they're powerful, far more powerful than anything we detected in our initial scans. As if to punctuate the sensor operator's words, space around Earth suddenly lit up with brilliant flashes. Dozens of human vessels appeared, not the crude chemical propulsion craft the had expected, but sleek ships that moved with purpose and speed. Where did those come from? Ra demanded. Unknown, Admiral. They weren't there a moment ago. It's as if they just appeared. Lieutenant Ox studied his tactical displays with growing concern. Admiral, these readings don't make sense. These human vessels are showing energy outputs comparable to our own frigate-class ships. That should be impossible for such a primitive species. Ra felt a chill run through her crystalline body. In all their conquests, they had never encountered a species that could match even their smallest warships. The psychological impact of their overwhelming technological superiority had been the foundation of their empire. "Open a channel to the human Admiral," she commanded. Admiral appeared on the screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood other humans in similar uniforms, and through what appeared to be a window, the distinctive hulls of warships could be seen. Admiral, Ra began, trying to maintain her commanding presence. "Your species possesses technology far beyond what our initial scans detected. This is unexpected." His expression remained neutral. "Perhaps your scans weren't as thorough as you believed. Humanity has had time to prepare for this moment. We've been listening to the galaxy for decades, Admiral. We know about the hegemony. We know about your conquest of the Republic, the subjugation of the clans, and the destruction of the civilization." The blood drained from Ra's crystalline features. "That's impossible. Those records are classified at the highest levels of the hegemony." "Information has a way of finding its way to those who know how to look for it," replied. "We also know about your tactics. You rely on intimidation and the shock of technological superiority to force surrender without a fight. Unfortunately for you, humanity prepared for something like this long ago." "Prepared how?" Ra asked, though she dreaded the answer. Smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Admiral, you're about to learn something important about humanity. We don't just build weapons to fight the enemies we know about. We build them to fight the enemies we imagine might someday exist. And humans have very creative imaginations." The tactical displays around the bridge suddenly erupted with new contacts. Human ships were appearing throughout the solar system, not just around Earth, but near every major planetary body. The asteroid belt was alive with activity as hidden installations came online. Most shocking of all, massive structures began emerging from the moon's surface, revealing themselves to be concealed weapons platforms. "How many ships do they have?" Ra whispered. Ox's voice was shaking as he read the sensor reports. "Admiral, I'm counting over 300 contacts and the number keeps rising. The energy signatures. Some of these vessels are showing power outputs exceeding our dreadnought class." Admiral's voice continued from the main viewer. "You see, Admiral, humanity learned a long time ago that the universe is a dangerous place. We've been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. Every conflict in our history, every technological advancement, every strategic innovation has been building toward this moment." Ra stared at the tactical display, watching as human ships took up positions around her fleet. They moved with a coordination and precision that spoke of extensive training and preparation. These weren't the panicked movements of a primitive species facing extinction. This was the calm, calculated deployment of a military force that knew exactly what it was doing. "You expected to find a primitive world ripe for conquest," continued. "Instead, you found a species that has been preparing for war among the stars longer than your civilization has existed. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, Admiral. We've perfected the art of warfare in ways your peaceful conquests never prepared you for." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was silent, except for the soft humming of the displays. Ra's forearms trembled as she processed what she was seeing. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that primitive species would be overwhelmed by their superior technology. But humanity had taken one look at the galaxy and decided to build something that could fight back. "What do you want?" Ra finally asked. "That depends on you," replied. "You can withdraw from our system and return to space. You can attempt to establish peaceful diplomatic relations, or you can try to carry out your original plan of conquest. But understand this, Admiral, If you choose the third option, you won't be the first to learn that underestimating humanity is a fatal mistake. Ra looked around her bridge at her crew. These were seasoned veterans who had participated in dozens of conquests, but she could see the uncertainty in their crystalline features, the way their natural light patterns flickered with anxiety. They had expected to overwhelm a primitive world. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a force that seemed to match or exceed their own capabilities. The humans had done something no species before them had managed. They had shattered the assumption of technological superiority. And if that assumption was wrong, then everything the hegemony believed about their place in the galaxy might be wrong as well. "We need time to consider your words," Ra said finally. "Of course," replied, "but don't take too long. Human patience is not unlimited, and our trigger fingers tend to get itchy when potential threats linger in our space." The communication ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in stunned silence. For the first time in the history of the hegemony, their fleet had encountered a species that refused to be intimidated. More than that, they had found a species that seemed ready and eager for the fight. Ra stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet. Each ship represented a technology and strategy that challenged everything she thought she knew about galactic civilization. The humans hadn't just survived first contact, they had turned it into a demonstration of their own power. The question now was whether the hegemony was prepared to face an enemy that had spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. As she studied the human formations, Ra began to suspect that her empire's long streak of easy victories was about to come to a very abrupt end. 3 hours had passed since the ultimatum, and the tension in the Sol system was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Admiral Ra had called an emergency council with her ship commanders, their holographic forms shimmering around the conference table aboard the Eternal Dominion. "The situation is unprecedented," announced Captain of the heavy cruiser Shattering Light. His crystalline form pulsed with agitation. "In 47 conquests, we have never encountered organized resistance of this magnitude." Commander of the science vessel Deep Resonance projected a series of tactical analyses. "The humans have deployed an estimated 437 combat vessels. Their energy signatures indicate technology that rivals our own in many categories. Most disturbing, they seem to possess faster-than-light communication and coordination systems that allow real-time tactical responses across their entire fleet." Ra studied the holographic displays showing human ship movements. The enemy formations moved like a single organism, each vessel positioned to provide maximum coverage and mutual support. It was a level of tactical sophistication that the hegemony typically only saw in species that had been fighting interstellar wars for. "There's something else," continued. "Our deep space sensors have detected massive energy buildups on the planet's surface. They're constructing something down there, something that requires power outputs comparable to a stellar reactor." Captain L of the assault cruiser Crystal Fang leaned forward. "Admiral, we should strike now before they complete whatever they're building. Our fleet still has the advantage in raw firepower." "Do we?" Ra asked quietly. "Look at these formations, Captain. These humans didn't stumble into space yesterday. They've been preparing for this encounter for longer than we initially calculated." As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. A group of human vessels was approaching the fleet, but these ships were different from the others. They were larger, more heavily armed, and they moved with the confidence of predators approaching prey. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," reported the communications officer. Admiral appeared on the main viewer, but she was no longer on what appeared to be a space station. Instead, she stood on the bridge of a massive warship, its interior visible behind her. The ship's bridge alone was larger than most frigates. "Admiral Ra," began, "I trust you've had time to consider your options. However, I'm afraid recent developments require us to accelerate our timeline." "What developments?" Ra asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Our intelligence networks have detected additional forces approaching this system. It seems your hegemony has called for reinforcements." His expression grew stern. "This changes things, Admiral. What began as a potential diplomatic misunderstanding is now looking like a planned invasion." Ra's crystalline skin darkened. The human intelligence networks were far more sophisticated than anticipated. The reinforcement fleet wasn't due to arrive for another 2 days, and it was supposedly traveling under complete communication silence. The additional forces were dispatched as a precautionary measure, Ra said, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol. Of course they were, replied with obvious skepticism. Just as I'm sure the troop transports in your current fleet are purely exploratory vessels. The humans knew about the troop transports. Ra felt her confidence crumbling. The invasion plan had been crafted with the assumption that the humans would be too primitive to detect the subtle differences between exploration ships and military transports. Admiral Ra began, "Perhaps we can reach an understanding." "I'm afraid the time for understanding has passed," interrupted. "You entered our system with an invasion fleet. You issued ultimatums demanding our surrender. You demonstrated weapons against celestial bodies to intimidate us. These are not the actions of explorers or diplomats." The human ships were now close enough that their individual weapon systems were visible on the tactical displays. What they saw belief. The human vessels bristled with weapon ports, missile launchers, and energy projectors. More concerning, many of the weapons appeared to be based on principles they didn't recognize. "However," continued, "humanity believes in proportional response. You brought 12 ships to threaten our world. We're prepared to give you a demonstration of what 12 human ships can do." 12 human vessels separated from the larger fleet and advanced toward the formation. They moved in perfect synchronization, their hulls gleaming with the dull metallic finish that humans seem to prefer over the elegant crystal construction of vessels. "Admiral," Lieutenant Ox called out urgently, "those 12 ships are showing power readings that exceed our entire fleet combined." Ross stared at the approaching human vessels. Each one was roughly the same size as her dreadnoughts, but the energy signatures they were producing suggested technology that operated on entirely different principles from anything in the hegemony's arsenal. "Open a channel to the fleet," she commanded. "All ships raise shields and prepare for—" "Admiral Ra's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Before you take any irreversible actions, let me share something with you. Humanity has been at war with itself for our entire recorded history. We have perfected the art of killing to a degree that would terrify most galactic civilizations, but we also understand the value of restraint." The 12 human ships had stopped just outside the range of weapons. They hung in space like sleeping giants, their weapon systems powered but not actively targeting the alien fleet. "What we're about to show you is not our full capability," continued. "Think of it as a small sample of human military doctrine. We call this a demonstration of intent." Without warning, space around the human ships erupted with activity. Missile ports opened and thousands of projectiles streamed toward the fleet. But these weren't attacks. They were targeting the empty space around each alien vessel. The missiles detonated simultaneously, creating a spectacular display of controlled explosions that formed perfect geometric patterns around each ship. The precision was staggering. Each explosion was positioned to within centimeters of the alien hulls without actually causing damage. "Impressive," Ox whispered. "The targeting accuracy required for such a display." But the demonstration wasn't over. The human ships then launched what appeared to be energy projectiles, but instead of striking the vessels, they formed a complex web of plasma streams that danced around the alien fleet. The streams spelled out words in perfect script. "We see you. We know you. We choose mercy." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was silent as the crew processed what they had witnessed. The humans had demonstrated the ability to target and destroy every ship in the fleet without causing so much as a scorch mark on their hulls. The level of precision and control required was beyond anything the hegemony possessed. "As you can see," his voice continued, "our weapons are quite accurate. Now imagine what we could accomplish if we weren't concerned about being precise." Admiral Ra found her voice. "Your point is made, Admiral, but surely you understand that the hegemony cannot simply withdraw. We have a reputation to maintain." "I understand perfectly," replied. "Which is why I'm prepared to offer you something that will allow you to maintain that reputation while also preserving both our fleets." Ra leaned forward. "What do you propose?" "A formal challenge. Single combat between champions representing our respective civilizations. Winner takes the system, loser withdraws with honor intact. Your people maintain their reputation as formidable warriors, regardless of the outcome." The proposal was unexpected. Single combat was an ancient tradition among many galactic species, though they hadn't used it in centuries. It would allow both sides to avoid a potentially devastating fleet engagement while still providing a clear resolution to the conflict. What terms? Ra asked. Each side selects their most advanced warship to serve as champion. No additional support, no interference from other vessels. A straight fight until one ship is disabled or destroyed. Captain L's holographic form flickered with excitement. Admiral, the Crystal Fang is our and most powerful vessel. No primitive human ship could possibly match Crystal Tech. Ra considered the proposal. A single ship engagement would minimize casualties while still providing the decisive victory the hegemony required. And despite the humans' impressive display, she found it hard to believe that any single human vessel could match the Crystal Fang. I accept your proposal, Ra announced. The Crystal Fang will serve as our champion. Excellent, replied. Our champion will be the UES Retribution. She's one of our newer designs, built specifically for situations like this. The Retribution separated from the human fleet and moved to the designated combat zone. As it approached, they got their first close look at a human warship. It was massive, nearly twice the length of the Crystal Fang, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports covered every surface, and strange geometric patterns along its hull suggested armor technologies the aliens didn't recognize. Admiral, the sensor operator called out, I'm reading some very unusual energy signatures from that vessel. The power output is enormous, but I can't identify the source. Captain L's voice came over the comm system from his ship. Admiral, the human vessel appears to be some sort of hybrid design. I'm detecting both energy-based and kinetic weapon systems, as well as what might be exotic matter manipulation devices. Ra studied the human champion. Captain, are you confident in your ability to defeat this vessel? Admiral, the Crystal Fang has never been defeated in combat. Our Crystal Tech armor can adapt to any known weapon type, and our particle beam arrays can slice through any known material. I'm confident in victory. The two champions moved to opposite ends of the designated combat zone, while both fleets to safe distances. The contrast between the vessels was stark. The Crystal Fang with its elegant crystal construction that bent light into rainbow patterns, and the Retribution with its angular, predatory design that seemed to devour light entirely. Begin when ready, Admiral announced from her flagship. The Crystal Fang struck first, its main particle beam array painting space with coherent energy that could vaporize most materials instantly. The beam struck the Retribution squarely amidships, but instead of the expected explosion, the human vessel's armor absorbed the energy and continued forward. Impossible, L transmitted. That beam should have cut completely through any known armor type. The Retribution's response was immediate and overwhelming. Instead of a single weapon, the human ship unleashed a coordinated barrage from dozens of different systems. Kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed, plasma bolts, particle beams, and stranger weapons that seemed to warp space itself around the vessel. The Crystal Fang's adaptive armor began working frantically to counter each attack type, but the sheer variety and intensity of the assault was beyond anything it had been designed to handle. The crystal hull flickered and sparked as its adaptive systems overloaded trying to counter weapons based on physical principles that science barely understood. Captain L, report, Ra called out. Admiral, this is unlike anything we've ever encountered. They're using at least 7 different weapon types simultaneously. My armor systems can't adapt fast enough, and their targeting accuracy. They're hitting the same impact points repeatedly, preventing my hull from properly adapting. The human vessel pressed its attack with methodical precision. Each weapon system seemed designed to complement the others, creating a cascade of effects that overwhelmed the defenses. It wasn't just raw firepower. It was a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction that demonstrated a deep understanding of how different weapon types could be combined for maximum effect. Within minutes, the Crystal Fang's defensive systems failed entirely. The elegant crystal hull cracked and shattered under the relentless assault, venting atmosphere and sparking energy conduits into space. I yield, L transmitted desperately. I yield. The human assault stopped instantly, weapons powering down with mechanical precision. The Retribution had won decisively, but more importantly, it had demonstrated something that sent chills through the fleet. The humans hadn't just built weapons to fight enemies they had built weapons to fight enemies they couldn't even imagine. Every system on the Retribution seemed designed to counter not just current threats, but potential future threats that might not even exist yet. Admiral's voice came over the communication system. "A good fight, Captain L. Your vessel performed admirably against a superior opponent." Ross stared at the damaged Crystal Fang as it limped back toward the fleet. The most advanced warship in the hegemony had been defeated not just decisively, but casually. The human vessel had never seemed to be in any real danger. "Admiral," Ra transmitted, "the victory is yours. The fleet will withdraw from your system as agreed." "I appreciate your honor in accepting the outcome," replied. "But before you go, let me give you some advice. The galaxy is changing, Admiral. The old assumptions about primitive species and technological superiority are becoming obsolete. Humanity isn't the only civilization that's been preparing for what's coming." "What do you mean?" Ra asked. "The universe is vast, and we've all been looking up at the same stars, wondering what might be out there. Some of us decided to prepare for the worst while hopping for the best. You might want to consider whether the hegemony is ready for a galaxy where conquest is no longer as simple as overwhelming primitive civilizations." The human fleet began withdrawing to their patrol positions as the vessels prepared to depart. But Ra couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter had changed something fundamental about the galaxy's balance of power. The humans hadn't just defeated the hegemony. They had demonstrated that the entire foundation of expansion was built on false assumptions. If there were other species like humanity out there, species that had spent centuries preparing for interstellar conflict, then the hegemony's era of easy conquests was coming to an end. As the Eternal Dominion prepared to jump to hyperspace, Ra realized that they were about to learn a very hard lesson about the difference between ruling through intimidation and ruling through actual strength. And in a galaxy full of species that had been preparing for war among the stars, intimidation was rapidly becoming obsolete. 6 months after the encounter in the Sol system, the hegemony was in crisis. The news of their defeat had spread throughout their empire, and subject species were beginning to question the inevitability of rule. Worse, other galactic powers were taking notice. Admiral Ra stood before the High Council of Crystals, the ruling body of the hegemony, in their grand chamber on the capital world of Prime. The chamber's crystal walls amplified and reflected light in patterns that normally induced awe and submission in visitors, but today the effect felt hollow. "Explain to us again, Admiral," spoke High Counselor Ran, his massive crystalline form towering over the chamber, "how our most advanced fleet was defeated by a single primitive world." Ra's reflection caught the council chamber's light as she projected the tactical recordings from the Sol encounter. "Honored counselors, the humans were not primitive. Our intelligence was completely incorrect. They possess technology that matches or exceeds our own in multiple categories." "Impossible," declared Counselor This. "Our crystal tech has been refined over. No young species could possibly develop comparable systems." "With respect, Counselor, that assumption is what led to our defeat." Ra manipulated the holographic display to show the human fleet formations. "The humans didn't develop technology comparable to ours. They developed technology specifically designed to counter civilizations like ours." The recordings played, showing the devastating efficiency of human weapons against crystal tech. The Council watched in stunned silence as their most advanced warship was systematically dismantled by systems that seemed purpose-built to exploit every weakness in design. "They knew our weaknesses before they ever met us," Ra continued. "Their entire military doctrine appears to be based on the assumption that they would eventually face technologically superior opponents. They prepared not just for the enemies they knew about, but for enemies they imagined might exist." High Counselor Rand's light patterns shifted to deep purples and reds, indicating severe displeasure. "And where did this leave the hegemony's expansion plans?" "In ruins, Counselor. The reinforcement fleet I requested arrived at Sol 3 days after our withdrawal. The humans were ready for them too. Admiral's entire task force was intercepted at the edge of their system by a human fleet 3 times larger than anything we had detected previously." The council chamber fell silent. Admiral commanded one of the hegemony's most powerful battle groups, with enough firepower to subjugate most civilizations. The idea that the humans had casually overwhelmed such a force was difficult to process. "What happened to fleet?" asked Counselor. "The humans gave them the same choice they gave us: withdraw or face destruction. When Admiral chose to attack, thinking he could succeed where I had failed, the human response was immediate and decisive." Ra activated another recording, this one from long-range sensors. The image showed fleet engaging what appeared to be a roughly equal number of human vessels. But within minutes, the formation was in chaos as human weapons tore through their defenses with frightening efficiency. "The humans didn't just win," Ra explained. "They demonstrated complete tactical superiority. Every maneuver attempted, the humans had already countered before he finished implementing it. It was as if they had fought us countless times before." "How is that possible?" demanded Counselor this. "War games, Counselor. The humans have been fighting simulated battles against hypothetical alien civilizations for centuries. They've developed tactics for every possible scenario, including facing opponents with crystal-based technology. When they encountered us, we weren't fighting an unknown enemy. We were fighting a species that had been preparing for us specifically for generations." The implications hung in the crystal chamber like a toxic cloud. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that their technology and tactics were superior to anything young civilizations could develop. But the humans had turned that assumption into a fatal weakness. "What is the current status of the human threat?" asked High Counselor Ran. "That's the most disturbing part," Ra replied. "They're not expanding aggressively into our territory. Instead, they're making contact with our subject species and offering them alternative arrangements." She activated a new display showing diplomatic communications intercepts. "The humans have contacted the Republic remnants, the clans, and even the survivors. They're offering military protection in exchange for trade agreements and defensive pacts." The Council's light patterns flickered with alarm. The hegemony's control over their subject species had always depended on the belief that resistance was futile. But if those species believed, they could successfully rebel with human support. "The humans are building an alliance network," Counselor observed. "They're turning our own expansion against us." "Precisely," Ra confirmed. "Every species we've conquered is a potential ally for humanity. And given their demonstration of military superiority, many of our subjects are beginning to view the humans as liberators rather than conquerors." As if summoned by their discussion, an aide hurried into the council chamber with an urgent message crystal. High Counselor Ran absorbed the information directly, his crystalline features darkening as he processed the contents. "The Republic has declared independence," he announced to stunned silence. "They've officially renounced their client status and announced a mutual defense treaty with humanity." The news hit the Council like a physical blow. The Republic had been one of the hegemony's most valuable possessions, rich in rare minerals and advanced in biotechnology. Their loss would be devastating both economically and strategically. "How many ships do they have?" asked Counselor this. "Approximately 200 vessels," Ra replied. "But according to our intelligence, the humans are providing them with advanced weapon systems and tactical training. More importantly, human battle groups are already deploying to space." "This cannot be allowed to stand," declared High Counselor Ran. "Send the third battle fleet to reclaim space immediately." "Counselor," Ra said carefully, "I must strongly advise against that course of action. The third battle fleet would be facing not just forces, but human military units operating with full logistical support. Based on our encounters at Sol, such an engagement would likely result in the complete destruction of our forces." "Then what do you suggest, Admiral?" Ran asked with bitter irony. "That we simply allow our empire to collapse?" "I suggest we adapt, Counselor. The galaxy has changed. The old methods of expansion and control are no longer viable. We need to find new ways to maintain our position that don't rely on military intimidation." Counselor leaned forward, her crystalline form catching the chamber's light. "Are you suggesting we negotiate with these humans as equals?" "I'm suggesting that we have little choice," Ra replied. "Our military superiority is gone. Our psychological dominance is broken. The foundation of hegemony power has been shattered." The council chamber fell silent as the full implications of their situation became clear. For centuries, the hegemony had expanded across the galaxy through a combination of superior technology and psychological warfare. They had never encountered serious resistance because no young civilization had ever been prepared for interstellar conflict. But humanity had changed the rules of the game. They had proven that a species could prepare for galactic warfare without ever having fought it, and that careful preparation could overcome raw technological advantage. Worse, they had demonstrated that the hegemony's expansion model was fundamentally flawed in a universe where species might be actively preparing for interstellar conflict. "There's something else," Ra continued. "Our deep space reconnaissance has detected other civilizations mobilizing their fleets. The human success has inspired others to challenge the established order. We're facing the possibility of simultaneous rebellions across multiple sectors." High Counselor Rand's form dimmed as he processed the magnitude of the crisis. "How many civilizations?" "At least 12 that we know of. The consortium is building new warships at unprecedented rates. The Empire has recalled all their fleets to home space and activated their reserve forces. Even the normally peaceful Federation is upgrading their defensive installations." The galaxy was awakening to new possibilities. For too long, advanced civilizations had dominated through technological superiority, while younger species accepted their subordinate status as inevitable. But humanity had proven that inevitability was an illusion, and that careful preparation could level any playing field. "What do the humans want from us?" asked Counselor this. "According to their diplomatic communications, they want the hegemony to transition to voluntary association rather than forced subjugation. They're proposing that we maintain our territory through mutual benefit rather than military threat." "And if we refuse?" Ra activated one final recording, this one showing the latest human fleet movements. "Then we face the certainty of losing everything. The humans aren't just building an alliance with our former subjects, they're sharing their military technology and tactical knowledge. Every day we delay, our potential enemies become stronger while we remain stagnant." The High Council of Crystals sat in contemplative silence, their light patterns cycling through colors that reflected deep uncertainty. The hegemony stood at a crossroads between adapting to a new galactic reality or facing inevitable destruction. "Admiral," High Counselor Rand said finally, "prepare a diplomatic mission to Sol. It's time we learned exactly what kind of galaxy humanity intends to build." As the council session ended and Ra prepared to depart, she reflected on how completely the encounter with humanity had changed everything. They had expected to find another primitive world ripe for conquest. Instead, they had discovered that they themselves were the primitives, not in technology, but in thinking. The humans had looked at the galaxy and seen not a collection of civilizations to be dominated, but a community of species with the potential to work together. They had prepared for war not because they wanted conflict, but because they understood that sometimes strength was the only language that bullies understood. And in demonstrating their strength, humanity had given every oppressed species in the galaxy something they had never possessed before: hope. Hope that the established order could be challenged, that superior technology could be overcome by superior preparation, and that the future belonged to those bold enough to seize it. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy through fear and intimidation for centuries. But as Admiral Ra prepared for humanity's next lesson, she realized that their time of dominance was ending. The galaxy was entering a new age, one where cooperation and mutual benefit would replace conquest and subjugation. And at the center of this transformation stood a species that had spent thousands of years fighting amongst themselves, perfecting the art of war, and dreaming of what they might accomplish if they ever learned to fight together. Humanity had not just defeated the hegemony. They had shown the galaxy what was possible when a civilization refused to accept limitations imposed by others. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of prepared resistance had begun. And in this new galaxy, those who could not adapt would find themselves left behind by species that refused to surrender their destiny to anyone else's vision of inevitability.